Before you guys watch this video, I just want to let you know that this video is entirely subjective, in other words, all opinion based. That means if you have a differing opinion that does not agree with mine, please don't take it as a personal attack to your opinion. I'm just simply stating what I think how the game is currently doing. That being said, this is a discussion based video, so I would encourage you guys to post your opinions in the comment section below. However, if it entails, this game is bad just because Nexon's a shit company, that's not really, I don't consider that the most appropriate answer, and I don't think that's going to be very welcome. But if you have a very good subjective opinion that you want to talk about in my video comments, feel free to do so, and I will be sure to read all of them. But for now, just get ready to watch the video. Nothing too spectacular happens during the video, so if you want to minimize it, treat it as a podcast like my other discussion videos, you can do that. Okay, so the topic of this video is going to follow up kind of what I did 2 years ago on why MapleStory is losing popularity, and this is going to be sort of the defending response to that video because I still think that MapleStory is a pretty good game, and I'm going to be talking about it a little bit more here. No, I am not white knighting MapleStory. There's a lot of problems to the game, and I would not consider it to be a very good game to play for an extended period of time, like 10 years or so. Although I've done that before, just not to the very same extent that some other people have. And the topic of this video is going to be why MapleStory is surviving. I'll give you guys the short answer right now in case you just want to hear the answer so you can click off the video. But for me, I truly believe that MapleStory survived mostly because it had such a powerful maiden voyage, the essential experience of the game, and for obvious reasons, nostalgia. So first I want to talk about MapleStory's history from release to now. I'm going to be talking about it mostly from a pre-Big Bang stance to now, just because they're very vastly different. For gameplay, at least in the pre-Big Bang sense, it was a very casual and social atmosphere. Players enjoyed the community more than they did the game. What was appealing to MapleStory back in the time was that it was one of the first games out there that you can log on and talk to people from all over the world. So, you know, back then, it would always be based on LAN parties, or you would just have to talk to people that were within your, I guess, city or town. But with the advent of MapleStory, you were able to communicate with tons of people, and that was a novelty thing. Not saying that was the first time that's ever happened. We had RuneScape and World of Warcraft a long way back then, but MapleStory was one of the big ones out there that made it much easier for you to socialize with people in a very cute sense, because, you know, all the characters are cute and it's a very 2D pixel animated game, and that was the biggest source of appeal for the game. However, the gameplay was absolutely awful, tons of bugs, the quality of life was ridiculous, it was just way too pointless, and it was a very stale game. It was really bad. But players had a low standard for gameplay and a quality of life back then because video games were new and young. Also, we were young, around like maybe youngsters to early teens, I would say like 8 to 13 years old. So we ourselves did not really care because it just, you know, we were young and it was fun just to talk to other people. That was the experience for us, and we didn't have any standards set for the games that we play because video games were also young as a whole. It wasn't until like maybe early 2000 or like 1995 around there that video games actually started to become a household thing. Of course, we can argue that video games have been around since the 1980s, but it didn't come under heavy scrutiny until around 2000, and that's when you saw those articles of people going like, oh, video games are bad for your health, or people who play video games are bums for life, and all of that meaningless conjecture. Currently though, MapleStory is more of a competitive and progress-based game, or a progressional game, and the game has pretty much regressed into becoming a single-player RPG with multiplayer interaction, as in you trade with other people, you chat, sometimes you get a carry for a boss here and there, but that's mostly about it. You do everything by yourself. You know, back then there would be people who would train in a party together. Even before the Lionheart Castle and Stronghold days, people would mostly find benefit in training in a party. Nowadays, training in a party is extremely pointless and inefficient, and therefore it'd be better to just train by yourself. Only the endgame bosses like Lucid and Will require a full stack party for you to be able to take out, but even things like Damien and Lotus, you don't really require anybody but yourself to take out the boss just because the damage is high enough to do so. In the quality of life aspect, gameplay has improved very much, and features too, but power creep and increased standards change for what is considered entertaining. No one really pantyhose anymore, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. We still have a couple people AFKing in maybe like Nameless Town, or sometimes you would see them AFK in Ardenmill or the Free Market, but even then, it's just, there's not really much to do in terms of just logging on and chatting. No one really does that anymore. If you do that, you would most likely do that on Discord or somewhere else. And only a very select minority of people, I would say like a good 10% of the population, play MapleStory for the sake of just logging on and chit-chatting. Everyone else is focused on improving their gear, training their characters, going on boss runs, and trying to get up, like, increase your status in the game. Population-wise, pre-Big Bang, the game had millions of active players, and at one point the most popular game in the world, even if it was for a very short while. MapleStory in both GMS and KMS was the best game in the world. There were so many players that Nexon released many new worlds to counter overpopulation. The only downside is that each server wasn't sustainable because there was only enough to sustain like the bare minimum for the player base that was required for each server. But once the population in each server went down just a little bit, the server has been therefore deemed dead. Currently, a good 90% of the players that are actively playing right now are the same players that have been playing for a long time and are much older. Most of the new players are just returning players who are coming back after quitting for like a year or two or sometimes even 5 years. We don't really see a good influx in brand new players or new kids that are coming into the game. We don't really see any new players into the game, as in like brand new players coming into the game. Maybe a little bit here and there, but it's just a token amount. The game is still going strong compared to the typical population standards for games. We have like, a couple thousand players playing on an active basis every day. And it is doing much better than it has been before with all the new content KMS has announced ever since the 5th job update. But it is much farther down than when it has been through. Only 3 total servers are doing reasonably well in GMS, Bara, Reboot, and to an extent Scania. There's just not enough to go around, and people are starting to realize that. So when Nexon opened that world transfer event back in late 2017, everyone tried to move over to one server just so that they can get a glimpse of that population that was back then. But all the remaining people in the other servers are just pretty much down there to, I guess, rot. Windia is not doing too bad. During my time when I was playing, sure, it seemed much better days, but the population we were hanging on, we were getting by. Wasn't big, but it was a pretty tight-knit community. I didn't mind too much. Now, a few extra things I want to talk about other than gameplay and population is that MapleStory's downfall in performance is not because of its own fault entirely, but because of how society as a whole's expectations of video games has gone up. I consider external reasons to be much more prevalent than internal reasons. However, yes, there are a few things that Nexon has done that damage the experience of the game. I don't think that's the main determining factor as to why that was the reason that MapleStory is not doing as well. Players desire more gain and fulfillment for less effort and time. MMORPGs used to be the top dogs because kids were younger and had a much longer perception of time. I'm sure you guys remember when you were younger, days felt a little bit longer and weeks felt longer, and as a result just time as a whole felt like you had a lot more time. But as you get older, your perception of time starts to get shorter, as in days start to go by very quickly without you realizing, and then a lot of people are going like, man, it's already been a year? I'm sure you guys can relate to that, right? A year as a child feels longer than a year as an adult, and therefore time-consuming games did not feel as, well, time-consuming. Nowadays, players heavily desire immediate gratification, a quick fix of accomplishment, or more intensive interaction games such as Fortnite, Overwatch, and League of Legends, where games are fast-paced and action-packed. There's a lot that happens in a short amount of time. And that is no one's fault really, it's just that's how society has went. We are slowly power creeping in what we expect in video games. We want a whole lot of stuff in a little amount of space or time. MapleStory as a game is just too slow, which explains why the people who persist in the game tend to be players from way back then who stuck around, not really any new players due to the quote-unquote meta of video games. Pay-to-win aspect didn't really help too much either. Even though it's entirely possible to achieve extremely high damage without spending money, it takes comparably equal amounts of time investment to achieve that, and people are just too impatient for that, myself included. I'm not really saying that gamers as a whole we're lazier or we're impatient, although I would say that is somewhat true. It's just that we want, like I said, we want to have more in less required. And games like MMORPGs or just RPGs in general are just not the most fun anymore because it's a very grinding game. You have to spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of resources to get gain that some other people just would be able to easily find if they were to play a more fast-paced game. So why did Maple survive? That is the point of this video. That is just it. MapleStory is a slow game. What many may define as its biggest defect can also be its winning personality. Players who aren't fond of how fast-paced modern games are can enjoy MapleStory, which lets you play at your own pace. It's a relaxing game. It does not require that much energy from the player to play the game. It's a stress-free game, and if you guys argue that it is a stressful game, that's all self-imposed. You don't have to put time into doing things like Marvel Machine Miracle Time or scrolling, which usually would cause people a lot of stress. You don't have to do anything. In fact, you can just log on and do absolutely nothing. It doesn't require you to do anything. It's not competitive, so there's no sense of pressure to perform well. Sure, you may compete with other people and who can get a faster dojo time or who can get level 250 faster, but that's not the point of the game. In games like League of Legends or Fortnite or Overwatch, that is the point. You have to compete with other people. Competition in MapleStory is optional. It's a good game to unwind from a long day of work or school or just a long day overall. I mention this a lot of times when I live stream. Let's say you have a really long day of work, you pulled a double shift like 12 hours and you had a really bad day, you got into a fight with your coworker or boss, or maybe you lost like an important file and you come home and you're just not feeling it. If you were to boot up a game like League of Legends or Overwatch, you would run into a whole bunch of toxic teammates who would probably either flame the crap out of you or ruin your experience of the game. And then that would make you even more upset, more irritated, and you would just not sleep very well just because you're so upset. But in a game like MapleStory, you log on, you have a lot of friends who welcome you back, and you just chill, talk to people, maybe do a quest here and there, do your dailies. It's a very routine-based game, and it's kind of like something you can look forward to. I find MapleStory to be a very good game just to escape. And while I don't want to deny that the community in MapleStory is definitely a lot less friendlier than it's been before, pretty much, at least if you were in Windia, I don't know about how it is in Barrow or the other servers, like everyone just minds their own business. We just chit-chat, have fun, talk to friends, maybe do a boss here and there. That's something I really enjoyed about MapleStory. That's why I like it so much. It's memorable. It's a unique 2D style. You know, you look at it, like anyone who played MapleStory in the past, if they see the art style, they know immediately that it's MapleStory. It's the childhood memories, and to many people, the first online multiplayer game that they've ever played. It's easy to get back into. A lot of players, myself included, continue coming back to the game because we know it doesn't require much to restart. Sure, if you want to get a lot of gear, you do have to spend a lot of money or you have to spend a lot of time. But in terms of just like knowing how to play the game, it's pretty simple. Games like Pokemon, MapleStory, Minecraft, they're very common returning games just because there's not that much required to relearn the mechanics and content. Versus competitive games that need the meta study, new characters analyzed, and refresh reflexes and skill. Despite it being way more competitive than it was before, as in people take the game much more seriously, Maple is still a self-determined progression game, as is any RPG. So I guess you can say that MapleStory is falling out of favor mostly just because of the sheer fact that people's perception of what is considered entertaining or a game worth playing is different, and MapleStory didn't really keep up with that. That's also the reason why it hasn't died either. It's paradoxical in a sense. It's killing you, but it's also keeping you alive at the same time. Kind of like Tony Stark's arc reactor before he got the new element thing, if you guys watched Iron Man 2. That's kind of what I relate Maple to. It's a slow game, and that slow game is protecting it from falling out of favor, but at the same time, that's what's making it washed up. Maple is washed up, it's extremely pay to win, and to progress through free-to-play requires too much time for it to be relatively worth it. Just like mobile games, where it's a lot of spending and just picking a god and pray. But if you don't care too much about being super progressive and just want to play and chat with friends, it's a good game, and that's why it's surviving for so long. In KMS, that's a different story. MapleStory in Korea is extremely popular, like the third most popular game, but I would wager that that's because it's the difference in culture. Being a Korean myself, even though I'm a very Americanized Korean, I definitely understand the mindset and the, I guess, methodology that we Koreans have in terms of like getting better at things. We just want to go hard on everything we do. You know, you look at us Koreans, we want to be the best gamers, we want to be like the smartest, like we study a lot. We want to be like, in terms of athleticism, not so much, but we tend to want to just like really try hard in everything we do. So you can't really compare KMS to it. I'm just mostly looking at GMS. I think people are just more inclined to games that can give you a lot more in a short amount of time and a short amount of resources and energy. Even though it is a lot more energy to play those games as opposed to play MapleStory, the, I guess, overall return, even if you lose your games, even if you demote like 10 divisions or whatever, you still had that experience, you know? So, long and short of it, the main reason why MapleStory has survived and is surviving, however longer it's going to be able to survive for, I don't know, but the reason why it's lasted for this long is just because it had such a good start. Like, not many games can reach millions and millions of players, no matter what point in time, if it's in the prime or if it's washed up. Like, it's a pretty hard thing to do. So they did something really well, and it's just overall the experience of the game, how the game is played, and what it expects from you as the player. It expects very little. Other games expect a lot more, and some people, they do enjoy that. They do enjoy being challenged and tested. Whereas games like MapleStory, let's be honest, it's a very simple game, not nearly as in-depth as other games. But anyways, that's gonna be it, guys. I think I've been rambling on for a lot. I just want to get you a very short, not really short video. It's actually a pretty long video, but I just wanted to let you guys know what my thoughts are on why I think MapleStory is lasting this long. It's not that I changed my mind. I've always had double opinions on things. Like, I would be against something, but I would also support it. I like to see the good in everything, and I'm a very great person in that regard. So when I made my video back in 2016, how I was talking about how MapleStory is like quote-unquote dying, it's also surviving in a sense because it lasted for what, 13 years now? It's about to be close to 14, I think. And in KMS, it's been over 15 years. So they're obviously doing something right, even though we give a lot of flack to Nexon for being a very greedy company and never doing anything right. And while occasionally I do side with that argument, they have to be doing something right to keep the game alive for this long. Alright, so let me hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. Once again, be constructive and try to be as politely critical as possible. I think I'm gonna leave it at that now. I am still waiting for the temperature to go down. It is currently like 90 degrees in my room and I'm not happy about that. I'm gonna get going right now. I'm gonna try to find a place with some air conditioning, but yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.